Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our next live broadcast. Today, we're going to actually focus on mental health and remote work and how all of this really comes together. And really, what are the examples that we're setting for our team? What are the stresses in our life? And how do we go and fix those? I have a special guest with me today. I have Reed Kojic, who is coming and talking to us from an HR point of view around like what are you hearing, what are you seeing, and what is really top of mind for you. So thank you, Reed, for coming and joining me today. Really want to hear your expert opinion, and I'm sure there's many others that will be able to leverage that wealth of knowledge that you have. So welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right, so let's kick off. So we're now in, I think, like week 6 or 7 of working from home, and I think people have kind of settled in. I would not claim it's a new normal, but have settled in a little bit more. People have started to figure out how to do their work, but new problems are starting to come up. And I mean, the ones that I hear are, wow, I'm in back-to-back meetings that I forget to even eat, or I haven't had a chance to step outside and take a break, or, I feel like I have to be online all the time because everyone knows I'm just at home so they can reach me. How do I deal with this? What are the patterns that we're seeing and recommendations on how to deal with those? So for me personally, I've been working from home for a while now, so I think it's not actually that different pre-COVID, post-COVID, minus obviously us needing to help the rest of the world, and obviously that time zone change is much more impactful. But I do find myself, due to the nature of the work we're doing right now, wanting to stay up, wanting to keep going, wanting to keep working because it is another hospital and patient doctor interaction or a teacher and a student situation. And I do find that that is so important that it keeps me going, maybe longer than I should on some days. And so I need to be very self-reflective on, when do I need a break and when am I putting my own health at risk such that it doesn't have a good long-term outcome. Really thinking about the marathon and not the sprint is kind of a constant reminder for me. I think the other one is finding balance, and a balance in a new world where my kids are on the other side of the door, and there's good and bad to that. The great part is I can see them anytime throughout the day for a quick visit. I'm loving that, and I've always loved that about the remote work. I think the bad part is, they're outside of the door all throughout the day. And so they're, making noise and they're doing a bunch of things. And sometimes it's hard to concentrate when that's going on. So what are your tips or what have you heard, Reed? Today's really just all about learning.
Absolutely. I have a bunch, and it's because, we're all looking for answers. We're all looking for ways to stay happy and well. And yes, there's a lot of back-to-back meetings for me. My working from home spouse today decided he wasn't going to wear pants to his first conference call. So we all have different problems. So what I will say is, first, the less that you have to use your willpower, the better. Research tells us that willpower is actually an exhaustible resource. So it's not that you have strong willpower and I have weak willpower. If you've been working all day long to look at that cookie and not take it, by the end of that day, your willpower is going to be a lot weaker. And so what that means is for the things that are good for you, that you don't necessarily want to do, that takes some willpower to do, getting outside, going for a walk, eating a healthy lunch, maybe taking a little break and stretching. Set timers, set alarms, put a reminder. If you're home with your family, maybe you and your spouse can do walking side-by-side conference calls, one of the things we've done, just to get out of the house. So the more that you can set up your environment to support those good choices and the less that you have to make the decision from scratch every time, the better. That said, I think for all of us, really basic advice applies. Eat, sleep, move. And that's kind of easier said than done for a lot of us right now, right? We're all anxious. It's hard to sleep. Either we've eaten all our quarantine food by day 4, or it's hard to get the things that we want. But the more that we can just kind of stick to the basics. And for me, I find that just keeping it really simple. Now is not the time when I need to learn how to do yoga and stand on my head. It's like, just get outside for a walk. Just keep it simple. And those things have been really helpful for me so far.
I think the reminder of maybe setting a timer or a schedule. So like every day at this time, I'm just going to take a quick 5-10 minute walk would probably be really useful. So for me, I definitely have a hard time scheduling in the like, I'm going to dedicate this time to doing that because the time comes and I'm like, oh, I have some downtime. I can catch up or I can go see the kids or I can do something else that I wanted to use to fill that time. And so I think it's a good thing to try, and I will definitely try. I will try to put that into my calendar and force myself to do it and see what results I have and report back to folks. But I think that's a great one. The basics: eat, sleep, move. I think the part that I've heard, from many people, customers, and even people internally, is definitely the eat has been a really funny topic. We talk about like pre-quarantine and post-quarantine. Like, are you going to come out half the size or double the size? We've heard many different interesting theories on this. The sleep is one where getting good sleep is so critical. I know for me, like if I'm not getting a pretty decent amount of sleep, at least minimum of like 6 hours, if I go below that for multiple days in a row, like I will end up with a migraine, like, and my body just shuts down, right? And so I have to hold myself accountable to maintaining that, or I know I'll end up in a worse situation where if I hit a migraine, like I'm out for a day or two, that's actually more prolonged. And so I think that constant reminder as well of like such basic needs make you actually more productive and less likely to make mistakes. And that's really important and critical in these kinds of times, right? It's not just about being awake, it's actually about producing your best work, and you need the sleep to produce your best work.
It is. And I would bet that your family knows that you need that. And so one of the things that has also been very helpful for me is making agreements in advance about what I'm going to do. Because then not only is someone going to hold me accountable, I'm like, hey, we're going to do that thing. I'm like, yeah, okay. But it also means that, so for me, I have an 8-month-old. Mornings are well, every time is hectic, let's be real. But mornings are super hectic. Even with no commute, it's still a lot going on. I am now working out 6 mornings a week
Wow.
on FaceTime with my trainer for 45 minutes. I don't hit it like, it's usually
That
6
is
days.
amazing, by the way.
One.
Props to you. Like,
Thank
as a
you.
mom of two, like, that's like unimaginable to me. So I'm amazed and like, congratulations. That is a huge
Thank you.
accomplishment.
I absolutely like make my husband feel my biceps. I'm like, look, I'm flexing. So I'm good about it. But having that agreement in advance, it's like, yeah, maybe the kid was up half the night last night. I still get up and do it. My husband knows that he's on with the baby starting at 6:30 a.m. So you worked until 1 a.m. whatever. Like, we're on. And so, part of what makes us resilient, actually, it's not that we're born resilient, it's resilient behaviors. And one of the key resilient behaviors is using your network. And so that means using your family. I had a big project for school, actually. I'm working on my PhD, not for work, but I've been sitting on it for like a month and a half, and it's just on my mind all the time. And so I called my mom and I was like, Mom, what's one thing you're really, really avoiding? For her, it was like medical insurance claims. Like, fantastic. I was like, this Friday morning for 2 hours, I'm going to work on my dissertation and you are going to work on your medical insurance claims. And so even though she's in California and, quarantining alone, and I miss her a lot, we were able to, first of all, kind of have some support, but it helped us actually get stuff done and feel good about, some of the basics we need to accomplish. That was much easier than just trying by myself to do it. So the more that any of us can use networking right now and just use our communities, the better I feel like it is.
Speaking of using your communities, I think one thing I've been talking to my team a lot about is we are a team. We need to have each other's backs and we need to be extremely flexible. There's some parents I talk to who are, single parents and have multiple kids under the age of 5. I don't really know how you can honestly work and deal with that situation because I know my 5 and 2-year-old, like, they need to be watched constantly, and while we can have breaks during writing exercises or reading exercises or even like being on a screen, it's not for long periods of time, right? You need someone to be watching them constantly, and so part of the things that I definitely tell my team is we need to have empathy for the fact that while all of us are quarantined, everyone is in potentially very different situations, where they don't have the support at home. And it's actually not a situation where it's easy to reach out to other people because it's not like they can come into your home. So it's a very limited support type situation. I know there's a case where I had my mom, on FaceTime watching my son read while I had to go take care of something. And it was like this virtual babysitter, which he could easily click end on, right? But I mean, we tried to be creative, but having that empathy for everyone that you work with to really understand that not only are you going to have the CNN moment with kids rushing in, but I think the time of being late and the time of trying to catch up and fitting things in between is a new reality for a lot of people. And understand and empathize that they're trying their hardest. It's just really hard right now. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Several. I think one of the things that's been really useful is actually because we are used to scheduling back to back, and it's even easier now where it's like, I know you don't have to go anywhere. You're sitting there at home, right? Um, but is folks who are scheduling meetings for like 25 minutes or for 55 minutes. And in addition, sometimes to taking load off the system at peak dial-in times, the other thing it does is give people 5 minutes between calls, which isn't a lot, but when you haven't had a bathroom break, or your kids are, and you can hear there's something going on with your kids, and you don't know what it is, but you know it's not good. Like whatever that is, it allows you a moment to deal with it. And so it's the accommodations that we make for each other don't have to be really elaborate. Sometimes it's just simple. It's also, for me, like I love it when I see my colleagues' kids in the picture, because not only is it like, reminds me of the life outside of work. I love seeing my colleagues, like these really smart, yes, exactly, these smart people I work with. I'm like, look at you being a mom or being a dad. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely been really useful. And the other thing I'm keeping in mind, I was talking to some folks earlier today. There's a couple people who are earlier in career who've gone home to like their childhood, family homes to shelter with their families, because they were like, look, we were in apartments alone going insane. Yeah. And so I think it's important to realize, because right now I think the most visible kind of distraction or addition for us a lot is the family coming in and out and that kind of a thing. But even and especially for the folks who are alone quarantining, who are socially isolating as well as physically distancing, it's really tough. It's really tough. And so I just like to keep that compassion in mind, that just because someone doesn't have kids running around or whatever, like they are still fighting a battle, and particularly one of the things that I have been really trying to keep in mind, well, it's twofold. One is, don't be miserable in advance. Like, there's so much bad stuff and suffering going on in the world right now. And I'm in a very privileged position to work from home and have a spouse who can work from home. And the reality is there's millions of people, whether they've lost their jobs or whether they were migrants in India who were, stuck when the shutdown came. Like, there's a lot of people suffering, right? And so it can be challenging, I feel like, as humans to deal with that and to deal with the magnitude of what we get every day. And so for me, it's like, first of all, don't be miserable in advance. There's a lot of bad things that haven't happened yet. And so thinking about all those scenarios, whether it's my personal life or whether it's the world, like, it's not helpful. Someone once told me worry is not preparation. So, like, deal with what I've got in front of me. And the other one is just being a force for good in the world. And so it can feel really helpless, I feel like, for a lot of us trapped in our homes. We see a lot of people struggling, whether it's us and our colleagues, just like with the day-to-day realities of life, or whether it's people who are, facing food insecurity for the first time, things like that, trying to keep the lights on in their house. Do what we can. I mean, I'm grateful at Cisco. We're actually, we always get 40 hours off a year to volunteer. This year we get 80 hours off. So we get 2 weeks to go spend. And so whether that's, hours at a time or whole weeks. But that lets me do something to feel a little bit less helpless about it all.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, speaking of losing your job, I mean, I think a lot of folks, again, feel the pressure of having to be connected all the time, because we are seeing a lot of folks who are losing their jobs, furloughs going on. And of course, we feel privileged to have a job and keep that job. But then it creates the other pressure of feeling like you always have to work. So I think finding that balance is really important. I think one of the things I talk to a lot of managers about is being very crystal clear around expectations.
Yeah.
So while I don't see you every day, like things haven't changed, I expect, we still produce outcomes as a team. I understand that there will be impact to that given challenges at home or challenges across the board, but we still want to be a productive team. We still need to be a productive team. And we need to, I think, raise warning whenever there's any concern that is ongoing, so we can find the necessary support for individuals or groups of people, and reset the right expectations accordingly.
Yeah.
I think communication in this type of situation is so important, right? I think there's a lot that people assume, and sometimes just having the conversation of, hey, like, do you really need me on from 7 a.m. to 12 a.m.? Or is it like I feel like I should be on all of those times, but really I'm setting those expectations on myself and it's not even expected of me, right? I think having that gut check conversation is important because there's a lot of assumptions in play. And obviously, the assumptions are due to the risk factors across the board that people see, right? Like job elimination is a huge concern that is top of mind for many people. I think we're getting to a point where we all, may know people now who is directly impacted by this. So it makes it very real and it makes it a top of mind issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So we're, about to wrap up, but I was wondering if you had any actual different ideas that we didn't cover today. I would love to hear, more tips, especially as a new mom. I think that's a huge challenge. I know for me, I joined Cisco when my daughter was 9 months old, and there was a whole other set of challenges like traveling with a pump in the whole 9 yards. But as a mom at home, I love cuddling my babies all the time if they were right next to me. I'm sure, that's challenging. Any other tips for new moms, well, before we kind of head out?
I'm going to share one that I think is probably counterintuitive and possibly not that popular, but it has gotten me through some super tough times. And that is a phrase called embrace the suck. So this one, having had some friends for many years in the Marines, it's one I heard originally from them a couple years ago when I broke my foot really badly and I was confined to my couch for a few months. I was looking for something to get me out of my self-pity. And I was like, all right, embrace the suck. And so I did some reading about that. And I repeated this as a new mom. So my son didn't sleep a lot for his first 6 months. I mean, I was getting 2 hours a night tops, but it was like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 40, like it was not real good. And so I started, first of all, reading about Navy SEALs. I was like Googling, like, sleep deprivation, how? But I started this phrase of embrace the suck. And as a new mom during these times, as a human being during these times, there is an element of suckitude about all of this, right? Whatever that is, whether we miss seeing our family, we want to just go to the grocery store to pick up a thing, the very real costs on human suffering and life. There's a whole bunch. So this phrase, embrace the suck, means lean into it. And there's this sense of finding the humor, even if it's gallows humor, finding the humor in these situations. And, for me, whether that's like the fact that my son has started biting when he eats recently, it's not the most fun, but it's pretty funny. Like if you stand back to think about it. And so like just the ability to find humor, find something to laugh about, find a way to grow through this. If anyone has not heard of Ryan Holiday, he wrote a book called Ego is the Enemy, and then he wrote a book called The Daily Stoic. Ancient Stoic philosophy, well, it's pretty ancient, couple thousand years old. It's all about how do I grow from the adversity in my life. I'm not a victim. I have a choice in how I react, right? And so it's about, for me, whether it's the challenge of being a mom and getting up to work when I haven't slept or whatever it is lean into it in the sense of I'm going to use this to become a better person. I'm going to use it to learn, to become stronger. I'm going to use this to be funny stories in the future because in 5 years it's going to be hilarious, even though today I hate it. Whatever that looks like, embracing the suck is like my non-intuitive saying that I'm using these days. So that's what I'll leave you with.
I think that is great advice. I also practice that. I think I call it something a little bit differently, which is find the silver lining. But I think, but I think it's, the same thing, right? At the end of the day, you're trying to find, regardless of the situation, what is a silver lining for me? And what are the things that I appreciate out of the situation? I think some basic things like we're all thankful at the end of the day that we have not been directly impacted by COVID. Meaning, my family is safe, and my mom and my dad and my in-laws, even those things, like it's easy to take that for granted because everyone's so focused on everything you can't do. And yet just stopping every day and remembering that helps reset all the expectations and helps, I think, ground us in reality. Well, thank you very much for your time. Really happy to have you. I'm sure there are many other topics we will discuss in the future, but I'm hoping this will, help folks who are stuck in the situation and really trying to find, how do I not only grow out of it, how do I deal with it, and what is everyone else hearing from both HR employee standpoint, and as a company. And I think you've given us some really great insights. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Lorrissa.